Modern foods to avoid. Here is a list of foods to avoid that have not been addressed in previous chapters. Always read the ingredients on your purchases. Avoid foods sold in plastic packaging like the plague. Use glass instead. Buy products in glass in all situations where what you will be eating comes in contact with the plastic in a way which saturates the food or drink with leached endocrine-mimicking chemicals. Some exceptions can be made. Fresh cold milk, to pick one example, is never at room temperature, never heated in the container, and only spends a few days in the container. Prefer glass when possible. Bring along some glass Tupperware for your grocery shopping. One can even find glass mason jars which have silicone jackets to avoid breaking the glass. It is curious that all blender and food processor manufacturers do not employ glass with external silicone jackets. I have found these rare items. One I ordered from Canada and the other from the UK. They do not break when taken care of. It can be naive to negate the possibility that such a small handful of major distribution executives can choose, as a group, to refuse or limit such innovations to protect their plastic-based distributors. As for water, buy water in glass bottles and get imported meats, imported hams, and seafood directly from the butcher without the need for pre-packaging, or order online. Most food containers, tins, and box soups are lined with plastics. Uncoated craft paper and containers exist, as we used in earlier times along with glass. Some exceptions can be made for choice items. Do a spring cleaning and eradicate plastic as much as possible from your life. This is how consciousness changes, by each of us making new inroads. The plasticizers, BPA, BPS, DEHP, PVC, and thousands of other generally recognized as safe plastics and phthalates, at a certain threshold per day, send estrogen-like signals to the endocrine system. This, paired with the hidden yet ubiquitous soy and canola oils, creates havoc in the body, changing men into women hormonally and women into a hyper-estrogen state, or the reverse may also happen due to the body trying to compensate for this persistent environmental toxin. The estrogenic compounds trigger the epigenetic on-off signals in the genome, which are modified through the environment to disactivate specific functions in the body, such as fertility. A recent study on frogs found that 21% of male frogs found in selected urban or suburban ponds were hermaphrodites. Eggs were found in the testicles of these frogs. This is a wake-up call. Many factors, from pesticides to soy and clover to BPA and other plasticizers, have been proven to mimic estrogen. Other studies link childhood obesity and behavior problems to endocrine disruptors in the environment. Estrogen-mimicking compounds and endocrine disruptors do not only affect the hormonal system, they also affect the brain, memory function, and cognitive thinking. Dr. John Ellsworth and his colleagues have studied one famous plasticizing compound, BPA, and its effects on monkeys. When exposed to BPA, the monkeys are severely impaired in their performance of simple tasks. Scientists believe that these plasticizing agents affect the asymmetric spine synapses in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, which are responsible for working memory. These effects were demonstrated at so-called safe levels of exposure as regulated by the U.S. government. Dr. Ellsworth is currently studying the effects of BPS, which was used to replace BPA following the media blitzkrieg on BPA. He no longer trusts the government's definition of what is safe. The good news is that when the monkeys were no longer exposed to these compounds, the impaired behaviors returned to normal. I believe that the overall decay of large swaths of the population, the brain fog, the diseases, the obesity, the crankiness, rage, and even much of the degenerate behavior stems from environmental toxins and deficiencies. This includes other estrogen-mimicking compounds such as soy, pesticides, synthetic medications, birth control, or brain-altering toxins such as aluminum. Other toxic metals, iodine-131, radon, etc. Sugar also plays a part in weakening the terrain. We are only at the beginning of understanding how the environment affects us. The scores of gender-specific hormonal problems today may be largely man-made. There is undoubtedly an unnatural component operating which is thwarting nature's way, going all the way down to conception and gestation, as the epigenetic codes bathe in this environment non-stop. This bathtub we are in leads to cancers of all sorts, gender-related obstacles to healing, and also fertility destruction. Avoid deodorized oils. Deodorization, a process of high-pressured steaming, destroys the molecular structure of the oil, creating trans fats and a decrease in vitamin E content. Vitamin E, in its natural state, protects the oil. If the mayonnaise isn't found in the refrigerator section, it has been pasteurized. Avoid safflower, cottonseed, rapeseed, canola, and store-bought mayonnaise. You can easily make your own mayonnaise using unrefined virgin sunflower oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, walnut oil, olive oil, red palm oil, or lard. Avoid the oat bran or wheat bran weight loss fad. Unless you soak and ferment the bran as the Scots did for their Sowen's recipes, the bran has a high concentration of phytic acid. Phytic acid prevents mineral absorption. Prolonged consumption can lead to internal demineralization. The weight that is lost is due to an internal loss of minerals, healthy fat, and structural tissues. Avoid puffed and reconstituted cereals, rice cakes, and soy proteins. These grains often go through an extrusion process at high temperatures which denatures the protein structure and has deleterious aging effects on the human body. Glycated end products. Avoid granolas and most cereals. Improperly prepared grains without pre-soaking in a slightly acidic medium such as whey, yogurt, lemon water, or milk are less digestible, less bioavailable, more irritating, and allergy-causing in our intestines. Cereal originally came from dried artisan sourdough bread. This cereal, along with raw milk and raw honey, is easier to digest. Avoid fruit juices. Fruit juices are always pasteurized. Pasteurization destroys the active therapeutic substances and makes them even more hyperglycemic than they already are. If juice is necessary for energy, potassium, etc., dilute them with a glass of spring water to avoid insulin spiking. Use mini-sized, homemade, or fresh juices only. Avoid low-fat products. Fat-soluble vitamins are necessary for the absorption of nutrients, and they are contained in the fat. It is a boon for the industry because they can sell 2 products instead of 1 for a better profit. Avoid powdered milk, milk proteins, dried skim milk, and lactose powder. These unnatural milk proteins are atomized, very allergenic, and can cause cell damage. Explained in the chapter on fats. Read labels because these ingredients are used in many items such as canned meats, soups, cakes, yogurts, health bars, etc. Avoid refined products. Prefer properly prepared whole grains and starches for optimal digestion, which have been pre-soaked, fermented, sprouted, or imported. Most oils are refined in store-bought foods. Make condiments and salad dressings yourself using unfiltered olive oil. Avoid using industrially processed sweeteners. Avoid brown sugar and white sugar. If sugar is not whole, that is to say opaque, with a non-crystalline structure, it is refined and stripped of its vitamins and minerals. Prefer rapadura cane sugar, which is rich in B vitamins, or better yet, unrefined coconut sugar. Even the best sugar is to be used with parsimonious moderation. Sugar made from white sugar beets is to be avoided like the plague. Monsanto owns much of the sugar beet sugar production. The best sweetener is unheated, cold-packed honey. Avoid agave syrup. Fructose syrups such as agave are harmful and cumbersome for the liver cells because only they can digest fructose, unlike glucose, which can be broken down by all of our cells. In the case of diabetes, we think we're saving the pancreas with these sweeteners, but in reality it is the liver that pays the price, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Not to mention the GM bacteria that are used in the processing of even organic agave. Prefer black maple syrup in glass bottles in moderation. Avoid white, refined stevia. 95% of stevia products. The refining process of white stevia powder is a synthetic one. However, green stevia, being the whole plant, is recommended in moderation and even has therapeutic benefits such as improving glucose tolerance. Avoid aspartame, synthetic excitotoxin of the nervous system, which breaks down into formaldehyde, methanol, formic acid, and diketopiperazine after being swallowed. What's more, aspartame causes weight gain because the body, thinking it is sugar, still secretes insulin after absorption. It is present in foods and drinks marked light or diet, candies, chewing gum, etc. Interesting fact, aspartame was put on the market by Donald Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush. Avoid soy. Soy, the major endocrine disruptor, is everywhere. It feeds our cows, chickens, and pigs to a large extent. It is found in many foods at the grocery store and most of the fried foods at restaurants. It masquerades under the title of vegetable oil. Explained in the chapter, Soy Trojan Horse. Avoid stimulants, chocolate, coffee, tea, strict minimum. Stimulants solicit insulin just like sugar does, creating a cycle of dependence. The daily usage of stimulants reveals that our base energy is low. Dependence on coffee reveals a gradual weakening of the adrenal glands, and a dependence on chocolate reveals a magnesium deficiency, manganese deficiency, and a high vitamin saturated fat deficiency. One is better off finding the missing magnesium or quality fat in this case than to become increasingly dependent on stimulants. See the threefold remedy in the chapter Nutrition as Remedy. Less known stimulants to avoid in the case of kidney sensitivity from the coumarin compound family. Cinnamon, green or black pepper, especially when fresh ground, tonka beans, licorice root, chicory coffee. Avoid filtered olive oil. The filtration of olive oil removes the precious vanadium, an important antioxidant in the body which protects the oil itself. This practice concerns 90% of olive oils. Prefer unfiltered, cloudy, and non-transparent versions. Always buy extra virgin unfiltered oils crushed with a stone press. Cold press labeling is not a promise of quality and is not a legally restrictive term. Temperatures range from 100 to 140 degrees production temperature depending on the oil. If you have a Saturday night off, you can write a letter to the manufacturer to obtain the maximum temperature reached during the extraction process of the oil. Prefer oils that are processed below 97 to 100 degrees, especially if you are dealing with oils high in omega-3 content. Quality olive oil works wonders for the throat and the stomach. The Greeks used this unfiltered oil daily in small soup spoons for medicine, for ulcers, for colds, sore throat, and skin strength. Try it the next time you have a sore throat. The sting you will feel in the throat is a sign of its antiseptic strength. A good way to tell if the olive oil has been filtered is by holding up the glass bottle of oil to the light and see if it is perfectly clear. All olive oils and even filtered olive oils, when cold or refrigerated, will cloud up, so test at room temperature. Only buy cloudy olive oil in glass bottles or tins. Good sources, imports from Tunisia, Portugal, Greece, Italy, Spain, or the USA. Avoid margarine. To solidify margarine, using liquid oils, they must artificially saturate the oils by heating them to high temperatures with hydrogen gas in the presence of nickel. This process creates hidden trans fats which disturb communication of cell membrane structures in the body. It's quite bizarre when you think about it. Avoid or limit hybridized wheat and pasta. Explained in the chapter on bread. Prefer pure rye, pure spelt, einkorn, emmer, Polish wheat, whole grain millet, organic oat groats, or unpolished rice, root vegetables, etc. Avoid most types of pasta. Pasta made with egg and egg yolks like the 40 egg yolk Israeli or Italian fresh pastas are much more digestible. Certain heirloom grain pastas may work for some. Many cereals, even organic, are high in glyphosate residue and one may need to seek online. Leaving pancake mix in buttermilk or yogurt overnight helps with digestion, as well as folding in whipped egg whites to the batter. Using sprouted flours or homemade flours using a mini stone mill grinder may also help. Some use banana to lessen the need for flour. Some mix in a bit of coconut flour. So many options for child and adult. Avoid oversized, bland vegetables. Prefer local, unsprayed, organic food in season, ensuring that no pesticides were used on the vegetables and no herbicides were used on the ground before planting. At a farmer's market, you can ask the farmer yourself. Prefer tasty, mineral-rich root vegetables and heirloom varieties. Smaller vegetables pack more flavor. Avoid heated honey. Honey is heated for 5 main reasons. 1. During the uncapping process by way of an electric hot knife. 2. During the harvesting to ensure maximum output. 3. To facilitate the filtration, which is often a pressurized filtration which generates even more heat. 4. For the jarring stage, in order to make it more homogeneous liquid and to avoid crystallization. 5. To avoid waiting for the natural maturation of honey that can take weeks or months depending on the honey and humidity. Once honey is extracted from the hive, the honey is more sensitive to changes in temperature. Honey that is heated beyond 91 to 93 degrees is to be avoided or limited. Unless you feel like writing a letter to the beekeeper asking him or her to specify the maximum temperature reached at all levels of production, you will need to trust cold-packed, really raw, and explicit labeling. As traditional practices take more patience, they cost the beekeeper, and he or she will always mention them explicitly on the product. In certain areas, this is not necessary, as the honey artisans may already have this level of consciousness, or conditions may create a natural abundance. Unfortunately, the level of awareness of most beekeepers is such that they do not discern the difference between honey heated less than 91 to 93 degrees and one that is heated to more than 95 or even 113 degrees. These ranges fall under the temperature of the hive argument of the beekeepers. Overmore, fermented and unfiltered honeys are non-existent in France, for example, because they are stronger in taste, are not translucent, and require more time to mature. We need to let go of this sterile obsession that we must filter, heat, and refine everything and begin to accept nature as it is. Prefer unspun, direct from hive to jar honey which does not use a centrifuge. Beekeepers that use these machines often retain the unspun honey for their family supply. Please note, organic and even raw honey can be heated up to 113 degrees, and treatments with antibiotics are allowed. Honey with the Demeter label does not exceed 95 degrees. Manuka honey does not exceed 83 to 91 degrees. Prefer non-organic Manuka honey because it is richer in antibacterial methylglyoxal. Once heated, honey loses its healing powers. Beyond 91 degrees, the enzymes secreted by the bees, which resemble human insulin, are destroyed and the honey becomes a simple sweetener. Its therapeutic value diminishes. Prefer unheated, really raw, or cold-packed honey, and especially trustworthy local beekeepers. Where I live, raw honey is easy to find. In France, it was nearly impossible to find without importing. The root word of honey in Latin means medicinal. Yet finding a therapeutic honey worthy of the name takes effort. Once found, it's a real treat. Personal example, if I eat honey that has been heated past 93 degrees, I get canker sores. On the other hand, the therapeutic value of unheated honey helps me get rid of canker sores. Opposite effect. A good indication of good honey is the integrity of the beekeeper. A tip to check good honey. Honey, rich in enzymes, non-heated, leaves temporary stains on old unvarnished wooden spoons. I prefer solid honey to liquid honey, as it retains the insulin-like bee saliva enzymes longer once the jar is opened. But solid or liquid is not a marker of quality, and neither type will have any value if they have been heated. Some use the heated honeys for cooking, spice cakes, for gifts at Christmas, or for making halva. Avoid jams, jellies, and fruits dried at high temperatures. Dried fruits may be soaked to break down complex sugars. True gelées were made from stewed fruits, pectin, and animal-based gelatin. Jams and jellies are not traditional foods. They arrived late in France following the wars and colonization by the armies of Napoleon. Their popularity is part of this last century in which we have forgotten our traditions. These concentrated fruits are very sweet, even when there is no sugar added, and they cause demineralization by internal acidification. In contrast, stewed apples, slightly fermented with whey, is traditional in France. The whey ferments much of the sugar content in the apples. Pectin allows for gradual absorption. One can scrape a vanilla pod into the stewing pot to promote the assimilation of the remaining sugars. Our ancestors understood by their intuition and their culinary traditions the dangers of sugar. Of course, culinary-style jams to go along with fats or cheeses in small quantity that are not made with GM beet sugar are fine in moderation. White beet sugar, or standard white sugar, amounts to 90% of what we see in store-bought items and goes through 40 heavy industrial and chemical processes. Prefer coconut sugar or cane sugar for your purchases, but it is best to avoid sugar in general. And in the case of apples, no sugar is needed. The GM white sugar should be avoided like the plague if you like having teeth. Limit fruit intake. Being very sweet, our beloved fruits can be harmful to health when abused. Less is more when it comes to sugars. Prefer acidic fruits like berries, which are alkaline in the body unless you are in an over-acidic state. Adding some home-whipped Devon cream or home-whipped cream using a CO2 cartridge and some Marcona almonds slivers to fruit salads, like the Waldorf salad, can help foster a proper assimilation of the vitamins in the fruits. Be careful with hybridized fruit, bananas, raisins, seedless grapes, honeydew melons, etc. Being hybridized to make them sweeter, their concentration of sugars can be quite damaging to blood sugar levels. Non-equatorial traditional societies did not eat much fruit. However, some unripe fruits may have therapeutic value because they are richer in enzymes and poor in sugar, such as organic papaya, pineapple, and bananas. Avoid pasteurized foods when possible. Choose fresh, refrigerated products when available. Juice, milk, drinks, soups. Remember that our beverages and soups are on the shelves because of pasteurization. If the product is available fresh and non-pasteurized, it will have more vitality. Avoid battery chickens and GMO-fed chickens. Prefer free-range poultry and the best quality eggs you can afford. Chickens are not herbivores but omnivores, and access to fields, insects, and worms is essential to their diet, especially for the omega-3 content in their eggs. Good quality eggs may be cooked in any way that pleases you. Local soy-free farm-raised eggs or fertile eggs are the best tasting. Make sure to ask if the eggs are soy-free. Whipped raw eggs may be used in moderation, preferably added to a raw milkshake, due to their amazing detoxification powers. Raw egg yolks may be used often. Add egg yolks to soups, porridges, salad dressing, to hollandaise sauce, to pasta dishes, to pizza, to baked potatoes, to potato hash that has been fried in 50% olive oil, 50% butter, shaken into fresh organic orange juice a la Orange Julius, to smoothies, etc. The 64-degree egg trend and the growing beef tartare with raw egg trend point to the need to procure certain raw vitamins in the egg. The Spanish make their famous tortilla omelet by turning over the runny eggs many times to congeal the outside edges so that the inside stays a bit runny and never dry. It has much more flavor when cooked this way. The French add some home-whipped creme fraiche to their ham and egg omelets, and they don't overcook them. Imported Devon double cream from the UK works great for this. Only the flaps are browned, the inside is less cooked. Eggs' colloidal properties help with the digestion of the cream. Using cream in this way, especially at night, can contribute to better sleep as quality cream is rich in tryptophan. Tryptophan is a serotonin and melatonin precursor. I have found this technique to be allergy neutral and thyroid neutral if the right home-whipped cream is used. In the category of basic staple items, such as milk, butter, salt, flour, broth, and eggs, it is wise to buy the most expensive and best quality possible. Staple items are less expensive as they are in high demand, so spending more in this area is of the ultimate intelligence. What about the recent study showing how eggs are dangerous for our health? The smoking egg yolk study. A serious look at this study reveals that the two main authors had a tendency to take speaker fees from large pharmaceutical companies while speaking on such topics as the positive effects of statins, anti-cholesterol pharmaceutical drugs. The third author of this study was an acclaimed vegan. No conflicts of interest to see here. Move along now. Overmore, eggs are our main source of choline for brain development and lecithin, which helps in the removal of excess internal cholesterol. The moment we start demonizing eggs, the basic food of all humanity, we are already quite far along the path of degeneration and propaganda. Find the best quality eggs you can. Order soy-free eggs online and eat them without restriction or fear. If you can find soy-free eggs from the farmer's market, they will be $8 to $15 a dozen. This is the right price to overcome cheap standard chicken feed. As for chicken, I usually buy French-style hens raised locally, which are much smaller in size but much tastier. You can also order direct from farms online. Order from states with better laws. Make sure the chickens are fed with local glyphosate-free corn and grain and have access to pasture and earthworms. A simple phone call will work. I am wary of soy-fed chickens. If you get tired after eating chicken, this can be a good sign. A tryptophan-rich weekly resource has been found, a needed resource in our serotonin-deficient society. If you cannot find quality chicken meat, you can replace it with the best shrimp you can find and some cured Polish ham, Spanish fatback, Spanish chorizo, or Italian cured hams or bacon slices for the missing fat. A small amount of raw shrimp ceviche every so often can give a healthy dose of active tryptophan. Even if truly fresh shrimp are hard to find on the West Coast, frozen shrimp can suffice. Water of freshly cracked young coconut blended with its own soft white coconut meat to avoid insulin spiking can help here as well. Avoid bouillon cubes or powders. Bouillon cubes, powders, and yeast extracts are produced by GM bacteria, contain high levels of free-form glutamates, MSG, a known excitotoxin, and are toxic to the nervous system. Prefer homemade broth made from leftover carcasses, feet, heads, and bones. Always buy chickens along with their feet and organ meats. A respectable chicken merchant or farmer will sell you all parts of the whole animal. Or buy extra backs, necks, and feet if possible. Spend more money on broth. I spend around $50 for my monthly broth preparation. Order soy-free, glyphosate-free stew hens online. Stew hens are older and less expensive. Quality sourcing for this key food remedy will take you much further health-wise. The cowboys would reduce the water out of the broth and roll the paste in cloth to dry it out and make homemade bouillon cubes. They would pull these folded cloth-covered spice cubes out of their pocket to add to soups and sauces on the fly. Soul-warming standalone broth recipe. Buy 2 small farm-raised, unsoy-fed chickens. Strip the meat and organs off of the first chicken. Dip in sprouted spelt flour or rice flour, then dip in a beaten raw egg mixture. Then dip the chicken in breadcrumbs from collected hard blended sourdough bread pieces. You can also toast the sourdough bread yourself and run it through a blender or food processor. You can fry these mini-sized tenders in 50% butter, 50% olive oil at medium-high heat in a cast iron skillet. Or you can store in the fridge for frying later. At the same time, broil or roast the other chicken upside down in a glass Pyrex bowl in the oven. Stuff with some organic lemon, rosemary, some garlic cloves if you desire, and 3 to 4 spoons of moulard duck or goose fat in the base of the casserole or cast iron pot. When roasted, pull most of the meat and grilled skin off of the second chicken to be eaten with the roasted organ meats. Then place the carcass with all the bones, feet, head, neck, the remaining sauce, a bushel of fresh thyme, coarse Celtic sea salt, 4 organic carrots, 5 organic onions with the skin on, a couple of turnips, half a small glass of cider vinegar or imported wine, some freshly grated nutmeg, the first chicken carcass, some marrow bones, 1 to 2 pig's feet, veal foot, oxtail, or multiple chicken's feet, backs and necks into the pot. Fill with non-municipal spring water or glass bottled spring water and let simmer for 6 to 24 hours at low heat in a stainless steel crock pot or pots, or even better in an enameled iron casserole with cover, Dutch oven. I leave this on while sleeping because I know my setup well. Strain and freeze in glass jars, leaving 2 inches of space for expansion. If the chicken is of good quality, the broth will be rich in gelatin and delicious. The large chicken bone extremities should easily crumble in your squeezed fingers. but not the large bone shafts. If the large bone shafts crumble, you have some weak birds. The chickens from the breast region in France, often called the Rolls-Royce of chickens, are only fed with milk and whole grain wheat. These bones will not break at all after 24 hours. If it's hard to find proper soy-free chickens, then grass-fed, frozen lamb shank, oxtail, veal foot, imported lamb's feet, goat's feet, or sheep's neck options can be helpful to avoid improper digestion of the archie-prevalent soy proteins. For an exquisite beef juice tasting broth, buy a New Zealand lamb roast from Trader Joe's or elsewhere, seasoned with herbs de Provence and Celtic salt, put in a glass bowl, and cover for 14 hours at 195 degrees. Put in the oven at night, and it's ready by lunch. Why all this madness to buy silica supplements in France? Silica is concentrated in gelatin and therefore good broth. Silica is difficult to obtain in today's food supply. Even the heads of the bones, after slow cooking over low heat, become edible. Dogs love this snack. Here is the best source of calcium and minerals at a low price. So to summarize, one abandoned tradition equals one new deficiency. As for vegetarians, vegetable broths using celery and beans do retain some gelatin. Avoid the industrially processed store-bought seaweed-based gelatins. Okra and raw transparent aloe vera slices containing gelatin-like properties along with tapioca, coconut, eggs, etc. Warning: do not use the bottom or edges of the aloe vera leaf, as these contain toxic elements. Avoid or limit unprepared pork products. Ingesting unprepared pork protein which has not been dried, aged, cured through fermentation, smoked, soaked overnight in an acidic marinade or vinegar tends to clot human blood, according to analysis taken before and after ingestion. As a rule, pork should be prepared. In China, traditionally, they soak the pork overnight in vinegar before cooking. In Mexico, they prepare pork carnitas by soaking in beer or citrus juices overnight. In Europe, traditionally, pork is cured and dried through lactofermentation. Thanks to the slow process of lactofermentation, a natural protective flora develops around the dried meats. Lactofermentation also improves digestion. Unfortunately, when you read the labels of standard fare cured meats, you will find plenty of things foreign to tradition. Nitrates, which can generate carcinogenic nitrosamines, lactose milk powders atomized at high temperature, and inverted glucose syrups to create a semblance of natural flora crust. Even the word spices can legally hide monosodium glutamate, MSG. To be fair, nitrates are less of a problem when they are associated with saturated fats. From personal experience, the ill effects of eating pork protein seems to be mitigated when the proteins are ingested with a sufficient amount of fat or lard. The fat emulsifies the proteins enveloping them. The proteins are then catabolized at a slower, more gradual rate. Also note that fat and cartilage have the least amount of protein signature. It is the proteins which contribute to the coagulation of the blood mentioned above. Could this explain why the Jewish and the Muslim populations avoided pork for centuries and to this day? Both of these population groups have a high incidence of diabetes, and this is well known among Jewish communities. Diabetes, which affects the eyes as well, is greatly affected and worsened by a high glycemic level in the bloodstream. These sticky proteins thicken the blood and cause coagulation. It is possible that through their wise traditions they kept disease at a distance for millennia. Keeping in mind the above information, the following are some recommendations which do not incur digestive fatigue. Be wary of overly soy-fed or GMO-fed pigs, as this will potentially overload estrogen into the fat. Ossabaw heritage hogs from local farms would be the best choice in the USA, but as this is near impossible to find, you will need to find true imports. Prefer blood sausage, boudin sausage, morcilla, Scandinavian black pudding. Combination of chopped pork fat, blood, onions, apples, milk, cream, and pork or other meat. For a simple recipe which synthesizes the basic ingredients from many recipes, here is my own black bread recipe. This recipe was built in such a way that you can simplify it to avoid any allergies or soy-fed foods. Keep in mind when you simplify or combine traditional recipes that you do not lose sight of the fat to protein to carb ratios. 1 part cooked rice. Add some caraway seeds, local rice if possible, or substitute non-glyphosate, imported and pre-soaked oats. 1 part mostly defrosted beef or pig's blood, or from any farm animal, found frozen in Asian markets from the Philippines, not China. 1 part pan-fried apples and onions mix, fried in butter, plus olive oil mix, Celtic salt, spices, optional, and 1 to 3 tablespoons of coconut or maple sugar, optional. Variation: add 1 part cubed Polish bacon or Italian ham, small Amish farm ground pork, beef, or fatback. 3 to 6 lightly beaten soy-free eggs, optional. If made without any eggs or meat or too much rice, apples, etc., you will increase the glycemic index and move away from the intention of creating a well-rounded power food. A glass of milk, optional. Raw iodine-rich Jersey or A2 milk if possible. 3 parts plus 3 eggs and a glass of milk. Easy to remember. Mix everything into a loaf pan and bake until the bread fragrance comes through and the loaf has expanded and is cooked in the middle. Test with a knife. It may also be sliced and lightly fried as a protein multiplier at any meal. Indigenous peoples and tribes before the advent of agriculture knew that the blood contained readily available nutrients which gave them instant energy. Blood was the main source of vitamin C, B12, and iron for many indigenous cultures. For a quick recipe, add imported pig or beef blood to 3 beaten soy-free, glyphosate-free eggs and some chopped up pumpernickel with salt, butter, cream, and spices, optional, in the skillet and cook like an omelet or scrambled eggs. This will make a spreadable pâté which can be served in a ramekin, spread onto rye crackers, or served with stewed vanilla apples after being run through a food processor. You may also order some of the more classic variations online. When our feces lose their darkish color and volume, detoxification suffers through lack of bile. So this inexpensive trick can be a powerful remedy. Sanguinaccio dolce is an Italian dessert using blood and cream and chocolate. It is served with fruit. It tastes almost exactly like chocolate pudding. Bran muffins or brownies can also be made with blood in the place of eggs for a healthier dessert. Boudin sausage may also be ordered online. Fabrice Delice French brand is the easiest to find in the U.S. market. Prefer pork belly. The belly and chest from which standard bacon is derived is rich in saturated fat, almost 50%. Therefore less pork protein per inch. In Canada, you can find pork belly and fatback preserved and cured with sea salt and maple syrup. The taste is superb. Prefer lard. Organic, unrefined lard is preferable. You can contact organic pork farmers directly to obtain organic lard through their networks. Quality lard is not often sold in stores. Otherwise, look for a good quality butcher shop, ensuring that the farms where you purchase your pork products allow the pigs a life outdoors with GM-free feed. A local production of corn is a good start. And if you get stuck, you can order imports from Europe through local distributors found online. Prefer Parma cured prosciutto or imported Polish cooked hams, French hams, Spanish Iberico, pata negra, paleta di cerdo, or Italian cured hams. One of the few raw fermented pork products that contain only one ingredient. Due to their perfect climate and overall quality, it is a very rare savoir-faire employing only sea salt without nitrates. Take advantage of their expertise. Some artisan cured hams and sausages from mountain regions may contain fewer preservatives because the altitude facilitates the curing and drying process. Prefer artisan crafted cured chorizo from Spain if possible. Avoid the low-cost, ingredient-laden chorizos found in undiscerning grocery stores. Be wise to fake imports which use deceptive marketing to pretend they are coming from Europe. Thanks to the red-colored paprika, cured chorizo is often made without adding nitrates. Nitrates redden the pork meat, rendering it more attractive to consumers. Therefore, a pure product is possible without all the industrial advantages and disadvantages and shortcuts. I prefer the mild, less spicy chorizo, which is better for the gut and its daily healing process, to be eaten in moderation. A small percentage of swine livestock retain a high quantity of feral hormones. Historically, these smaller percentages of swine were used for heavily spiced meats to cover some of the stronger flavors. Many pig farmers have tried to crossbreed out the feral strong odor of these pigs. If we follow our traditions, we find out how to use different meats in different ways successfully without endangering genetic diversity. When I go shopping at the grocery store, I have them slice me Parma prosciutto ham from Italy by the pound to avoid all the plastic liners found in pre-packaged prosciutto. Or I purchase this imported item by the shank and store for months in my fridge. I also buy bratwurst from Germany or high-quality German knack hot dogs, which are cooked on the griddle with some cooked apple slices. This is also a great staple food meal for kids, along with weekly homemade eggs plus Jersey milk, baked custard. These knacks can be found at Trader Joe's. Anything more than marginal non-GMO soy feed for pigs will add hormone deregulation to the needed and wonderful calming thyroid-positive vitamin D-rich hormones the pig offers. We love bacon for a reason, but we should be wary of allowing the mixing of something bad with something inherently good. Edgar Cayce stated that everything on this planet has a tropism within the human body, meaning an area, organ, gland system where the compound will aim its effects once digested by the body. To explain, if one eats a food which has a specific tropism to the kidney, like royal jelly for example, then that compound will act as a delivery vehicle directly to the kidneys. If the royal jelly is adulterated and mixed with a preservative that can harm the kidneys, it will have a free ride to the center of the organ and can be twice as dangerous. So to take the example of the healthy vitamin D-rich pig fat hormones, if they have too much fake estrogen attached to the good hormone, then this fake estrogen gets a perfect delivery vehicle. This reality can outweigh the good effects of the underlying child-calming hormones which we love. I eat American pork products less often, as I know estrogenic soy meal or oil plays a larger part in their feed than I would like. Of course, Ossabaw Island hogs fed local non-GMO corn can be a delicious yet rare exception. Small farms may provide better options with outdoor pigs raised on local corn, but don't be afraid to outsource in certain areas if they are soy-fed over a marginal percentage. Truly imported prosciutto brands ordered online by the shank, stored in the fridge, and hand-cut at home will offer the best pricing. Even the less than professional slicing can have positive benefits on satiety. I support local efforts, but I also see that more consciousness is needed in certain areas, and spreading consciousness helps the local community over time to improve their offer and truly honor nature's gifts. Breeding back in smaller rustic European and feral swine will allow us to begin right-sizing our pigs so that the watered-down, obese genetic profile is no longer passed down. Read the labels of your purchases. Once educated about the ingredients in the products you buy often, the obsession of reading labels will soon be replaced by an informed conscience. Avoid farm fish. Farm fish are raised in close quarters. They are not fed their natural diet, and they often suffer from parasites. Salmon, for example, are fed with a powder to which they add pigments to make their bright orange color. What's more, the taste is inferior. Prefer wild fish, preferably whole fish with their heads, livers, and eggs included and cooked inside. Note: a significant percentage of the population suffers from parasites, often unknowingly. The first signs are liver insufficiency, where the stools are often pale or green. Problems maintaining weight, abdominal bloating, and renal insufficiency are indicated by chronic foamy urine, tiredness, abdominal pain, sleeping problems, and impulsive sugar cravings. These signs may also point to a deficiency of the spleen and pancreas according to traditional Chinese medicine. In this case, look online for Chinese herb complexes associated with these organs. As for parasites, the least expensive and least toxic and most effective parasite treatment is to eat habanero peppers. Combine these peppers with a meal of baked potato and Gruyere cheese to avoid harming the mucous membranes. In Ayurvedic medicine, mimosa pudica powder is used. I share this recipe because the drugs often used against parasites are highly toxic to the liver. Peppers have been traditionally used successfully in many parts of the world for millennia. Another solution, a bit less radical, is wormwood juice extracted from the fresh plant with a juicer. Drink sips 3 or more times per day. Both techniques can give you a stomach ache and impulsive diarrhea, but once the parasites are well installed in the organism, there is no other choice but to pass through this type of experience. Avoid lean meats. Digestion of lean meat requires fat-soluble vitamins, which are contained in fat. Lean meat depletes our reserves of these vitamins and makes meat difficult to digest. Add more butter in this case. Certain native and Indian tribes would prefer to fast than to overeat lean meats, as they knew that eating lean rabbit meats, to pick one example, without any fat would deplete fat-soluble vitamin stores in the body. Those who continued to eat lean meat during famines would often die, whereas those who abstained and drank only water would live longer. Avoid only eating cooked meals. Rediscover the taste of raw animal products. All traditional cultures, even modern, have dishes composed of raw animal products. Steak tartare, sushi, sashimi, toriwasa, chicken tartare, kibe, fermented fish, slow-dried game meats, carpaccio, ceviche, seafood, shellfish, dried mountain sausages, raw cheese, etc. I eat raw animal products every day. Some cooked and some raw seems to work for me. Today we know that the vitamins in raw foods are more bioavailable. It is very difficult or impossible to obtain certain vitamins otherwise. Also, when eating cooked foods, keep some raw and some fermented condiments or sauerkraut on the table to assist digestion. Avoid being boxed into the supermarket way of life. Order your meat directly from the farm or farmers markets. Find small farms in states with better laws on the internet. Seek out health food stores, local cooperatives, and WAPF chapters. Don't be afraid to drive many miles on a monthly basis for good food. It is challenging to find livestock fed and raised naturally on pasture without a concerted effort. The meat and milk of these animals are rich in vitamins and rich in CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. CLA helps to burn fat and improves the digestibility of meat. Elk, bison, and seared venison are also great American options. Another reason our ancestors were not obese. If you have no farms or WAPF local chapters nearby, or the meat quality of these farms is not good enough, then New Zealand steak and lamb products are easy to find in many areas. Some examples that have worked for me. Ordering from small farms online for soy-free, glyphosate-free eggs, pork, chicken, beef, and fats. Using imports to counterbalance soy deficiencies found in many American foods, such as butter from France, Ireland if soy-free, Germany, Finland, Latvia, etc. Limit USDA products. This is hard to do. Do not assume that organic foods are free of glyphosate. Do not deny that we are in a tangled web after 50 years of the FDA being run by executives from Monsanto and similar companies. Be wise to hidden monopolistic distribution practices. Cisco and other suppliers force butchers to order a minimum of 95 to 98% of their meats from them or else no contract. Pages of Cisco's catalog for imports are mostly American-made lookalikes of European classics. Even companies specializing in imports have a high percentage of these lookalikes. They hide behind the local argument if questioned on the subject. This all reeks of the FDA's monopolistic control. Know that even the healthiest livestock races in America have been bred to gargantuan sizes. They are given so-called hormone-free feed, which is filled with estrogen-mimicking plant hormones such as soy, clover, colza, glyphosate, corn, for decades. We are eating these hormones in 99% of situations, even if they are sourced from the best farms around. Something about an array of oversized pigs and the claim that they are heritage breeds doesn't sit right with me, even though it is true. Know that frozen foods are inferior, and outside of fats, bones, blood, and water-based items, freezing destroys much of the vitality from our foods. On the positive side, reheating frozen lobsters to where the tails and claws are hot but the tamale in the head remains a bit warm or cold will allow you to retain some of the active principles in the vitamin. Even frozen items can be used therapeutically with less cooking if that is needed, albeit to a lesser degree than a living lobster, for example. I personally can only eat a handful of items in a given grocery store, even in the organic stores. This is how well built the prison is. At farmers markets, if the item doesn't have a much higher price point, followed by your own verification of quality through questioning, it is probably made using industrial shortcuts and USDA supplements which contain glyphosate corn. Even the Amish use soy in supplements now, or at least the larger commercial Amish farms do. Do your research by a simple phone call. With so many obstacles, how can we find clean food? Order from farms in states or countries with better food laws. Order soy-free, glyphosate, corn-free animal products and animal fats online. Order online soy-free, glyphosate, corn-free knuckle bones, young calf feet, Asian market, and or chicken feet, soup, and marrow bones and stewing hens for broth. These foods, along with fats, are the best foods for freezing and are the least expensive of the higher priced quality foods. Spend at least $50 a month on broth preparation. Use bulk prosciutto of Parma, Italy, or German imported bratwurst, New Zealand lamb, bright pink veal for red meat, or grass-raised and finished meats such as venison. Replace weekly chicken, if you cannot find soy-free chicken, with home-cooked fresh shrimp and bacon, or imported bacon, or Polish fatback. A pricier $30 soy and glyphosate-free chicken may be ordered online only monthly if you need to save money. Import canned foie gras made of duck or goose liver if possible, at least seasonally. Use nutrient-dense, wild-caught, whole fish and other seafoods which are not affected fully yet by the USDA process. Seek out organ meats, fish eggs, etc. Eat all parts of the animal. Study cultures and traditions around the world, even on Netflix, to sniff out new ideas. Personal example, I love going to Russian shops and buying milk curds and farmer's cheese from Lithuanian soys, honey from rustic climates, cured Polish bacon, whole herring, cod livers, alpine butter, etc. Avoid industrial preparations, non-traditional and adulterated food at a lower cost. If we are not careful about the ingredients in our food, we leave the door open to calamity. Maltodextrin, atomized milk powders, lactose, chemically refined seaweed-based thickeners and gums, cornstarch, hydrolyzed wheat proteins, soy lecithin, inverted sugars, fructose, agave, and hygiene products containing glutamates and dioxins which penetrate the skin. Even if they are labeled organic, their inclusion is suspicious and the quality control of their true composition is not systematic. The idea that such ingredients are organic is upside down and creates a false sense of security with the industry. It also allows for the possibility that one day they may point-blank lie about the origins of these adulterated ingredients. This has already been the case for GM foods in the United States. It is better to close the door to this Trojan horse by refusing to buy products that contain non-traditional ingredients. The latest European study on GM foods revealed that tumors can develop much later in the lifespan of laboratory rats that have ingested a small percentage of GM food at the beginning of their life cycle. Human translation: small percentages of GM foods as a child can manifest pathologically as tumors and the corresponding cancers around the age of 40. Insidious to the point of calculation. Now, of course, they have sent their experts and funds to disprove the study in the latest news reports. May we all wake up to deception in all its duplicitous forms, and then stay awake. The GMO multinational corporations have even undertaken the production of GM sugar beets and GM sugar many years ago, and their ability to infiltrate all foods is becoming possible, especially since the last mega buyout of Bayer Monsanto in Germany. Hello, Europe. Avoid unbridled consumerism as applied to agriculture. In the past, on our grocery shelves, there were some root vegetables, tubers, cabbage, a few types of salad, onions, beans, apples, and some local seasonal fruit on display in our town markets. Nothing like the hundreds of colored varieties of all sorts of fruit and vegetables that we find in our supermarkets today. Have we gone too far? Have you ever imagined a world with less one-sided agriculture, with less depletion of the land and its minerals? A richer, more durable contribution to the humus of the earth can be provided by cows, sheep, and grazing animals. Less cereal, pasta, and cookies, and more nutrient-dense foods such as raw milk, raw butter, and high-quality eggs as it used to be. Our standard milk, butter, bread, salt, and eggs are a pale comparison to former times, and this should be our health focus, not health care, but education first and foremost. We live in a fantasy that is not in line with our true heritage or local resources. The soil of the earth has paid for this, and of course, our own health. This situation can be hard to perceive because we are immersed in it. We must be aware that the rainbow of colors that decorates the supermarket produce section can have severe consequences for the earth and soil. Be aware of the serpent in the rainbow. Detect and avoid your primary allergens. Quite often, our principal food allergies come from the foods to which we are the most attracted. An elimination diet can be helpful here. Some adulterated foods and their consequent effects on the body may take a while to manifest as symptoms. Some major allergens, Solanaceae, peppers, eggplant skin, tomato skin if left uncharred, peanuts, mycotoxins, dairy products, foods that contain gluten, industrial egg whites, and synthetic products. Is it possible that the adjuvants, additives, embryos, and the strange array of proteins in our vaccines may be the cause of many key allergies? Were gluten and milk protein put into these vaccines to trigger an allergic response, ruining our interface with the basic foods for survival? Read the ingredients on the vaccines themselves and you will see a strange mixture of proteins, including some of these mentioned. If you are allergic to gluten, for example, do not focus only on the gluten, but also on your intestines. Intestinal porosity is the leading factor of our modern allergies. Often people sensitive to gluten seek other cereals to replace their old habits, but without realizing that cereal and grain-based foods in general are difficult to digest for damaged intestines, especially our improperly prepared cereal-based foods of today. Between gelatin-based bone broths, butyric acid from saturated fats, and the array of enzymes present in lacto-fermented foods, we have the keys for healing our intestinal walls. See the GAPS diet. Detect and avoid genetically modified organisms. If GMOs are like a modern-day Goliath, what is the perfect stone that leads to freedom from Goliath's tyranny? The coconut. The GMO industry has built itself on making nations dependent on their genetically modified seeds and their host of associated chemicals. Seeds such as soybeans, corn, canola, cotton, beet sugar, papaya, and alfalfa, yes, even alfalfa sprouts. Coconut trees are naturally abundant all over the world in the tropical belt, without the need for any seeds whatsoever. Coconut products can replace their two biggest stars, soy and canola. Coconut milk and coconut cream can replace soy milk and creams. Coconut butter, having a neutral taste, can replace their canola margarine and soybean oils, which are hidden everywhere in the industry under the name vegetable oil. Sugar from the nectar of the coconut flower, an abundant and largely unused resource, can defend against the latest child of the GMO industry, GM sugar from GM sugar beets. Coconut fibers, mousse, and foams generated by bacteria that are fond of coconut fibers can be used to replace packing and packaging needs, insulation and bedding, as well as gardening and mulch supplies, replacing the GM corn styrofoam pellets and foams that pollute our environment with hidden GM remnants. Coconut flour for cakes and cookies with the lower glycemic index. Coconut water or coconut water kefir unpasteurized for energy and potassium to replace Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is loaded with corn syrup and possibly hidden GM sugar. The origins of their ingredients are protected by their patent, not to mention the nerve destroyer otherwise known as aspartame, the life accomplishment of Mr. Rumsfeld. Aspartame is found in high doses in Coca-Cola Light and Zero. If we make room to add flax and hemp to the equation on a larger scale, we will be able to minimize the impact of GM cotton. These two plants, being more resistant to aggressions than cotton and thus not needing pesticides, could single-handedly dismantle the pesticide industry, 30% of which is aimed at cotton. The coconut palms are spread out all over the world, and they are impossible to control from afar. The GMO multinational corporations know this very well, and is banking on the fact that we won't see this clearly. That's why they have an interest in demonizing the coconut, as was done just after the Second World War by various selective studies. Of course, the coconut is not a local or traditional food in the USA or Europe, although many anthropologists have stated that man evolved from the tropical regions. However, the coconut can help us to make the transition and free our industries from the grips of the GMO lobbies. As a society, we can return little by little to our traditional fats: grass-finished tallow, moulard duck fat, goose fat, imported lard, imported butter, raw Amish cream, etc. Personally, I eat a mix of traditional fats already, but the humble coconut can help the industry to regain its balance, its freedom from Goliath. The discovery of coconut oil for weight loss can replace many harmful diets like the oat bran diet fad. I call the oat bran diet the internal vomiting diet or the hidden anorexia diet. See the chapter Nutrition as Remedy for the warmed coconut oil drink. In addition, coconut trees tend to purify the soil. This resource has barely been tapped into, and therefore vast resources are at our disposal. The coconut is both a good source of fat, especially for the brain, and a source of economy for thousands of small communities around the world. Let's not forget that Goliath eventually fell, but only because David used his mind and aim. Giant industries behind the GMO movement sow the illusion that they are fierce, unbeatable, and invincible. Don't be fooled. Pierce the illusion. The emperor is naked behind the curtain. A population that is conscious of the game-changing power of the humble coconut, our lowly flaxseed, and the textile hemp plant is their worst nightmare. As we change our buying habits around these guidelines, the sands underneath their structure begins to shift. Avoid low-quality supplements. I do not support the host of empty synthetic and industrially produced supplements on our shelves today. Prefer traditional supplements in pure undiluted forms or powders without sugar or maltodextrin. Quality fermented cod liver oil, a bottle of Zechstein transdermal magnesium oil, a good Swedish elixir for digestion, a source of vitamin C dried at low temperatures without sugar added, such as camu camu, amla berries, etc., a good quality echinacea for the immune system with its analgesic and numbing quality, a genuinely traditional strong winter cough syrup, such as Herbal Gem's smoker's syrup, which has nothing to do with smoking, but it works to clear out the lungs, organic and hexane-free castor oil compresses for detoxifying the lymphatic system, Herbal Gem gemotherapy for different and varying drainage points around the body and for other healing modalities, choleritic herbs and bitters, and small amounts of green clay in drinking water for trace minerals, geophagia, intestinal relief, or general maintenance are all great tips for a healthy and preventive way of life. Take note as well that supplements are not a modern invention. All cultures have used the concentrated plant and nutrient-dense remedies revealed by nature throughout history. Avoid aluminum and fluoride. These two obstacles may be the most harmful elements in the whole system and must be taken seriously. Aluminum is everywhere in our society, from the manufacturing of concrete, the cleaning of the water supply, the bleaching of flour, in the plastics and containers used for packing and packaging, in our favorite restaurants' cookware, our pots and pans, in our vaccines, macroaluminum, our medicines, in baking soda, in soy products, in our hygiene products, our deodorants, etc. I even had to buy a copper pasta strainer just to avoid contaminating my monthly broth preparation. But also in our environment, in the air we breathe, entering through our eyes as nanoparticles, microaluminum, not to mention mercury, lead, and other heavy metals circulating. Clean your environment and buy an IQ Air filtration system. If you live in an iodine-rich coastal region, this may be less necessary. The ideal long-term detox, transdermal magnesium therapy using Zechstein inside magnesium oil in glass bottles. Its purity ensures its ability to detoxify heavy metals. It has been tested for this with good results. Fluoride is somewhat easy to avoid in dental and hygiene products. It can be harder to avoid in dicalcium phosphate, which is present in most supplements. However, its prevalence in the water supply poses a unique challenge. Fluoride and fluorine, which is even easier to absorb than fluoride, are byproducts of nuclear waste. We are not talking about healthy, naturally present trace amounts of fluoride. As Paracelsus rightly stated, the difference between a poison and a remedy is the dose. After over 50 years of exposure to this man-made addition to the water supply, the electrical arborescence of the synaptic brain has suffered tremendously. This flocculation and fluoridation of the brain structure and pathways have successfully dumbed down many in the overall population so that they no longer bother investigating the water itself. Fluoride solution. Avoid properly unfiltered bath systems or limit exposure. Drink only bottled water and glass from reputable historic sources which have not been purchased by megacorporations. Use Zechstein Inside transdermal magnesium in glass bottles on the head biweekly. Transdermal magnesium chloride crosses into the blood-brain barrier, BBB. Try for 6 months, then bi-monthly after that. Many supplement companies try to sell you their patented molecules like magnesium threonate, which we do not oppose, by stating that they are the only forms that can cross the blood-brain barrier, but these man-made L-form molecules are made naturally in the body with magnesium chloride. The chloride even attaches itself to the foods we eat during digestion via hydrochloric acid. The body then, through acidification processes, makes its own natural threonate R-form molecules, especially when applied to the head. Full spectrum. Avoid standard pet food. The cheapest pet food is quite awful, but even healthy organic marketed pet food can create problems for your dog or cat. Dogs especially, but also cats, have become used to modern foods. A full-on raw, whole prey, whole animal type of dog diet seems like the right solution, and this type of diet may work for some, but I have found that somewhere in between the dog's ancient diet and a healthy modern diet works the best without pulling the dog too far from societal integration. We are seeing better options in refrigerated pet foods which are high in real food from grass-fed animals, without soy, corn, or GMOs, but I have yet to discern if ash and chalk are being used as a filler in some of these items, which destroys the dog's articulations. I also wonder if a life of high-dose synthetic vitamins found in most of these foods may have downward consequences, but the choices are getting better. It is possible to find dry food which has been made with 85 to 95% duck meat, chicken meat, or other animal protein combinations such as the Almo Nature brand. These items are more pricey, but they will last a long time if properly sealed. Cut the dry food with a mixture of roasted chicken, which I will describe below. Cut up 1 to 2 roasted chickens per week, or roast them yourself for small to medium dogs. Once roasted, take some good scissors and cut the whole chicken into bite-sized pieces, including the bones, the bone extremities, the spine, the neck, the back, the livers, or other pieces contained on the inside. Your dog or cat won't die from choking on anything. This is an urban myth, probably invented by the industrial dog food manufacturers. The only thing that you will throw in the trash are about 10 or so of the uncuttable long bone shafts. If it's a fatty chicken, you can drain off some of the fat, store in the fridge, and use for cooking later. Each time you bake a new chicken for the dogs, you should take a few of the choice parts, raw heart, raw liver, and a small handful of raw meat. Give this to your dogs mixed with the dry food to avoid loose stools when they are hungry. This way you will not encounter cooked food only vitamin deficiencies down the road. For bigger dogs, you may need to copy the same idea but find a butcher who can sell you beef or lamb parts, or find a deal on chickens. This cut-up mixture can be stored in glass in the fridge and added to 40 to 60% dry food, which has 85 to 95% dried duck, chicken, or beef. This method will keep your dog or cat healthy without the need for perpetual veterinary services or vaccines. It will take 1 hour a week. If you cannot find good dry dog food, you can give more of the mixture, but 50% roasted mixture, 50% quality dry food is a good combination, at least from my experience. The feces will not be as picture perfect as when they were on standard dog food, but it will have less odor, and it will be solid and a bit thinner. For cats, you can add raw milk and more raw meat to the mix. They will have beautiful fur and healthy, strong bodies. It's easier to do from puppies or kittens onwards. If they are set in their ways, you may need to use their hunger against them to break them into the new foods. Show strength here, as it is worth it for them in the long run. In parallel, even young children must skip a meal or two at times before they will be hungry enough to accept changes in their way of operating. This is not cruel or inhumane. It's an emotionally sober yet loving strategy by strong parents to ensure nourishment even if there is resistance. The vaccines, the bad food, the articulation problems, and most of the diseases of our pets may all be attributed to this oversight on food choices directly or indirectly. It works. I have tested it. Figuring this stuff out will put you on the noble path of truly honoring man's best friend.